Okay, so you have written the code and it's running the program, and suddenly somewhere it stopped and it failed. The program is not executing from there onwards. And no, you can see that why it is failing and everything is good, and you will feel that, but you don't know why it is failing. So then how can you find that root cause and what is the problem and all these things? Why it stopped in the middle? So in order to identify the root causes and proper messaging to understand the failure, and that purpose we need to include in our code this exception handling concept. And even even the error comes or exception comes, the code will execute till the end. So it won't stop. So that is the exception handling main advantage. So it is one of the powerful topic to handle the runtime errors. Runtime errors, we cannot handle anything, but you want to handle runtime errors. So that normal flow of the application, if you want to maintain, you need to include exception handling concept. You need to include exception handling concept. So what is exception? So exception is unexpected, unwanted event which occurs during your program execution at runtime. While running the program time, unexpectedly it stop executing your program. And it basically disrupts the normal flow of program execution. It will stop in the middle. That is called exception. So what is error? So error indicates that a serious problem, so that a reasonable application should not try to catch. Exception means you can catch that. You can try to catch that exception. So even if it comes error runtime also. And so when the exception occurs, your program will terminate in a particular line. So entire program won't execute. So then you will get some system generated message. So where it failed. But so that's not a meaningful system generated message. To get more meaningful and understandable reason why it is failing, you have to handle exceptions at runtime with a meaningful message, so that you can easily figure it out why it is failing. And that's the main purpose of exceptions and exception handlings. That handling means you are handling the exceptions at runtime or compile time, wherever it is. That is called exception handling means. You are handling the exceptions either compile time or runtime. Both you can handle. So why exception occurs? There are many reasons. Like, non-existing file, you're trying to open it. Or so you are giving a bad input. And you are trying to give some network connection issues. You got some network connection issues. So all these are the reasons for exceptions. And we already discussed the array index out of bounds exception, right? The reasons. So did you remember what are the different reasons why you will get a array index out of bounds exception?
Well, for the out of bounds, I know if you have too many elements in the array, it throws that error to you more than what's fixed.
Yeah, something so that's not very clear, but yeah. So let me give you that. So those are the runtime exceptions. But I'll tell you that what are the things. But what are the exception hierarchy? Exception classes hierarchy. So all these classes are available in java.lang package. Java.lang package, you can find them. Java.lang package, you can find them. So the top one is a throwable class, and then exception, error. So you see, throwable is the topmost exception class. Then exception class. Then, so exception again, you have two categories. These are the compile time exceptions. So these are all the runtime exceptions. So compile time exception is also called checked exceptions. Runtime exceptions are called unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions occurs at compile time only. While writing the code itself, you will get some issues. You can handle them with these two different keywords you will use. So IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception. So these are the exceptions. And we have unchecked exceptions, which occurs at a runtime. So arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, index out of bounds exception. These are the runtime exception examples. And these are the compile time or checked exceptions examples. IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception. So what is mean by checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions? So the definition is the classes which extends to throwable class other than runtime and error is called checked exceptions. So checked exceptions occurs at a compile time only. That's what here. See, the classes which directly inherit throwable class except runtime, exception and error are known as a checked exceptions. So example is IO exception, SQL exception, checked exceptions are examples, and they occurs at a compile time only. Unchecked exceptions. The classes which inherit runtime exception are known as unchecked exceptions. So arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bounds exception. So these are the unchecked exceptions. So unchecked exceptions are not checked at compile time, but they are checked at runtime. So that's the checked and unchecked exception. This is one of the interview question also. So what are the different type of exceptions? And exceptions hierarchy. So what is the hierarchy of exceptions? So there is a error. Error means basically a mistake in the code, something that is called error. So we have a stack overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error. These are memory related issues. So those are called error. And so these are the different type of exceptions. Okay, when you will get these exceptions. So let's go and discuss one by one. The common scenarios when you will get each exception. Let's understand. First, if you understand why you will get that exception, then you can easily solve that. Right? So the first exception, arithmetic exception. So arithmetic exception you will get if you divide any number by 0, there occurs an arithmetic exception. And second one, so null pointer exception. So if we have a null value in any variable, performing any operation on the variable, throws a null pointer exception. So scenario where null pointer exception occurs is, so when you have a null value in any variable. So generally you will declare so object as a null and string as a null. These two only you will declare as a null. on that null variable. If you try to do some operations like calling the methods, calling variables on the null variable, on the null reference variable, then it will throw null pointer exception. So is this clear? See, string s equal to null. See, on that s, I'm trying to call the method. So this will throw null pointer exception. Why it is throwing null pointer exception? Because s has a null value. So before calling the methods, make sure that reference variable has a value. That reference variable has a value. If value is not there, you cannot use it. You cannot use it. So that's the null pointer exception means. So this is also called NPE. So number format exception. So wrong formatting of any which leads to number format exception. So suppose you have a string variable, string value, string s equal to ABC, and you are trying to convert that into integer. So you are trying to convert into digit, so like integer. So string you cannot convert into integer, right? So this will lead to number format exception. So generally, if there is a number here instead of alphabets, then you can convert into number format exception. Int I equal to integer dot parseInt. So yes. So this will cause the number format exception. So number format exception, you will get it. So because I'm trying to convert alphabets into integer, that's not possible. So how you can do the formula? This is the formula. You have to by heart these formulas. So any string value, how can you convert into integer? So int I, this is the primitive data type. And this is the object. Object you are converting into primitive integer, primitive float to primitive long, byte, short, to any primitive format. If you are converting, so that is called, so there are, so classes we call them wrapper classes. So those wrapper classes, so will help us object you are trying to convert into primitive format. So now here, so this is the wrapper class. Wrapper class dot parseInt. So this object is trying to convert into primitive format. So, but here that object is not in proper format. It's not in, so number, it's alphabets. Alphabets you cannot convert into integer. So that's why you will get here number format exception. If you try to do wrong formatting, that's why it is throwing a number format exception. So all these formats you should know why you will get null pointer exception, why you will get arithmetic. If you divide any number by 0, then in this line, it will throw arithmetic exception. So there is one more array index out of bounds exception. If you are inserting any value in a wrong index, that's what I told you. If so, your array size is something more than the array size. If you more than the array size, more than the array size, if you try to insert, then you will get a array index out of bounds exception. So if you are inserting any value at wrong index means more than the array size. See, now this is I'm inserting this 50 at a 11th position, but this size itself is a 5 only, but I'm inserting at 11th position. So that will throw array index out of bounds exception. More than the array size, I'm trying to insert it. So that will throw array index out of bounds exception. So how you can handle these exceptions? So using, there are keywords, try, catch, finally, throws keywords. These are the 5 keywords you can use to handle these exceptions, runtime exceptions, so or compile time exceptions. So what is Java try block? So Java try block is used to enclose the code that might throw an exception. Which line of code is throwing an exception? You put that line inside the try block. So you must use this try block inside the method body only. So suppose if an exception occurs at particular statement of try block. So for example, in the try block, you have 3-4 lines. Second line, you got an exception. Third and fourth line won't execute. So the rest of the block will not execute. It will skip and it will go to catch block. So it is recommended not to keep the entire code in the try block. Only relevant code regarding the exception, only that code you keep in the try block. Remaining you put outside the try catch blocks. So that's a Java try catch blocks. So Java try block must be followed by either catch or finally block. So this is the one. Try, this is the block, catch. Catch is followed by parenthesis, exception class type, and a object reference you have to write. Then catch block inside, you write something, e.print stack trace, you want to print the complete error trace. You will use a print stack trace method, so which is available in the throwable class. So you can call in all the child classes because that's inheritance, right? So you can call all the anywhere, any classes you can call. Or try block can be followed by finally block also. Without catch also you can write try after try block, then finally block also you can write. So the catch block, so basically a catch block is used to handle the exception by declaring the type of exception within the parameter. So here you can specify which exception is occurring in this try block. That exception type you can write. Suppose if you're dividing a number by 0, you can put the arithmetic exception there in the highlighted place. Or you're trying to get a null pointer exception, you put there null pointer exception there. And if you're getting a number format exception, put there number format exception. And you are getting an arithmetic exception or array index out of bounds exception, put there array index out of bounds exception. If you don't know anything, put a generic exception class, that is exception class. If you don't know the specific exception type, you can put here exception class. Then reference variable, you put any variable name, E or EX, whatever you want. So, or you can put a try, catch, finally, all 3 you can write, or only these 2 you can write, or only these 2 you can write. Both are valid and another one also valid. All 3 also you can write. So that is the how Java try catch block will work and finally block. So what is a catch block? Catch block, when it will execute? If there is an exception in the try block, catch block will go and catch that error and executes the catch block. If there is no error in the try block, catch block won't execute. Please catch these points. These are very, very important. When catch block will execute? Catch block will execute only if there is a issue in the try block. If there is no issue in the try block, all lines executed successfully, then catch block is not going to execute at all. That's the catch block means. So you can write a one try, one catch block. You can try one try block, multiple catch blocks also you can write. Or you can write try, catch, finally you can write. or you can write try finally also. Make sure always catch block must be there so that you will come to know which exception it is occurring. So that's the catch block means. Java multi-catch block. So try block can be followed by one or more catch blocks. Each catch block must contain a different exception handler. So each catch block has one different exception type. Each catch block purpose is different. That is multi-catch blocks. What are those ways? Okay. At a time, only one exception occurs. And at a time, only one catch block is executed. All catch blocks must be ordered from most specific to most general. So, for example, catch for arithmetic exception must come before catching for exception. So that's this is the one. See here you are getting a array. So this is the first 30 by 0. So you will get a what error? First you will get arithmetic exception. And but this also it will throw error. That is array index out of bounds exception. And other than these two, any other error comes, that is exception. So if these two are not occurring, a different error you are getting in the try block. Then you'll this will take care. But at a time, only one catch block will execute, either this one or this one. And if these two are not there, and this will be taken care. So system.out.println, the rest of the code will execute. That's a one try multi-catch blocks. Okay. So what is finally block? So finally block means basically if you want to execute any important code like closing database connections, closing file connections, file objects, file streams if you want to close, or anything, something more important you want to execute mandatorily. Even something happens in the try block and but this whatever you write in the finally block, it guarantees that will execute always. Even the try block fails also, it will come to finally block always. If try block is successful also, finally block will execute. Try block fails also, finally block will always execute. That means finally block will execute always. So this is how you can write. Try, catch, but so it is missing here. The class name you have to write. Exception type. So this is the mandatory. And finally block. So if there is an exception here, catch block will execute, then finally block will execute. So the try block is successful, then catch block will skip, finally block will execute. Can you observe that? Both cases finally block is executing. That means always finally block is executing. So that's the finally block means. Suppose why you need to use a finally block. So basically you want to do some cleanup activities and you will use a finally block, like closing the files, closing database connections. Such cases, those kind of code you will write inside the finally block. And when finally block doesn't execute is, so when a thread is killed, so such cases, finally block won't execute. System.exit, finally block code won't execute. So exception in the finally block, then code won't execute. Finally block code won't execute. These are the three cases finally block code doesn't execute. So finally block inside, you can put a close